Confessions of a Nuclear Warrior. My name is Clair Tomlinson. I was born and raised in Iowa. But my story has to do with when I left there, joined the Air Force, got put on a Titan II missile crew, 10-story, 10-megaton nuclear weapon system. Wound up pulling duty in Tucson, Arizona. Well, one night, as you probably guessed by now, yes, it's true, we received a message to launch every nuclear bomb we had at that time, and yes, it was a mistake. Now, I wrote the story, and it was published in Hustler magazine, September issue 1984. Excuse me. And now I'm going to read to you that story. Late last year, columnist Jack Anderson made headlines by charging that a 10-megaton thermonuclear warhead had almost been launched by mistake during a test at a Titan base in Kansas. The Air Force predictably responded by denying the allegations as completely false. 5 months later, however, former CIA Director William Colby admitted that the Pentagon has in fact received false alarms of nuclear attack from our highly computerized warning systems more than 100 times. 100 times false attacks. You ever hear a story, cry wolf? Details remain cloaked in secrecy, but Hustler has obtained absolute confirmation of just such a near catastrophe, an authentic first-person account of exactly how, where, and when it happened. Clair Tomlinson. The author of this article was not only a witness, but also participated in this incredibly true-life drama. It took place one night in October of '65 when he was serving as Air Force Crewman First Class with the 571st Strategic Missile Squadron at one of the 18 top-secret missile sites near Tucson, Arizona. Haunted ever since by deeply disturbing memories of that fateful night, Tomlinson drifted from job to job, lost his wife, home, and all of his savings, and decided after years of soul-searching to break security by telling this harrowing true tale for the first time exclusively in these pages. Well, let's get to the story. It was 3 a.m., as I best remember. Dead morning. We were on alert at one of the Titan II missile sites scattered out in the desert around Tucson, Arizona. 571-2 to be exact in my case, just west of Benson, up the hill around the curve off the left, yeah. Those of you who saw it, yeah, that was it. Down on level 2 of the launch control center, we were babysitting the bomb, a 10-megaton thermonuclear warhead mounted on top of a 10-story ICBM Titan II missile. Each 4-man crew, there were 4 of us, the commander, the deputy, the BMET, and the MFT. I was the MFT, bottom of the totem pole, bottom of the rank. Yes, I did all the work. Each 4-man crew pulled 2 or 3 24-hour alerts a week. 2 or 3. That's 24 hours a shift. A lot of time. They were dull, boring, giant pains in the Yavolsky, during which we were responsible for 2 things. We had to keep the tons of electronics and on-site machinery in perfect working order, and we had to prepare to launch the missile if so ordered immediately, if not sooner. Thank God we never had to launch them, or of course it would mean that we had gone to war for the last time ever, and of course it would mean the end of everything and everybody. I was monitoring the missile support system guidance, fuel, electronics, air conditioning, hydraulics, pneumatics, fire, and toxic vapor indicators, all displayed on dozens of panels, lights, and dials mounted all over the control center. Monitor, monitor, monitor. Watch, watch, watch. Be alert, be alert, be alert. It can happen any second. Constantly watching. Level 2 was called the no-loan zone, because it was the brain of the weapon system and the location of the launch button. For that reason, no one could ever be left alone there at any time. No. Nobody alone on level 2 of the control center. This was to make it impossible for any one person to launch the missile on his own without official military authorization to do so. As usual, the air conditioning was not working, so I was sitting there in my underwear, BVDs if I remember right, maybe it was Hanes, sweating profusely, blurry-eyed after 18 mind-numbing hours of watching the dials and listening to the electronic drone of the control center support gear and the missile guidance computer. The commander and sergeant upstairs asleep. Rightfully so, well-deserved sleep shift. The deputy commander sat slumped forward in the command chair, sound asleep with his head on his hands at the control console, his launch key on a chain around his neck, looking somewhat ridiculous with a pistol strapped over his boxer shorts. He was completely exhausted from the wear and tear of alert after alert after alert, never getting enough time to rest in between before we saw ourselves coming and going on alerts. Didn't we just come in yesterday? We're going out tomorrow. The deputy was breaking the no sleeping on level 2 rule. But that's the first part of my confession. Nuclear warriors broke the rule all the time. We all slept on level 2. We did it every chance we got, while the missile stood ready in its underground silo, 275 feet away, with two 7,000-pound steel doors between us, just in case the missile blew up. Didn't want to blow up the crew too. Well, we were all monitoring and catching a little nap every now and then. Well, I was just about to drift off to sleep myself. You know, we used to drift off a lot. Couldn't help it, nothing else to do but sit there. And on with the story. Well, I was just about ready to go to sleep there when the weird, high-pitched warble of the emergency war order signal began to sound its shrill warning. Drives you nuts? It went off. The signal always meant a practice launch message designed to test us on our reaction time and performance efficiency as a missile crew. Then came a hollow voice over my earphones. Mole hole, this is Mother Sack with a blue -1. I repeat, mole hole, this is Mother Sack with a blue -1. I repeat, blue -1. Blue -1 was no practice code. It wasn't one of those endless exercises base command was always throwing at missile crews in the middle of the night to keep us on our toes. A blue -1 was a real emergency war order. The only time they had ever sent a blue -1 before, as far as I knew, was on a standby base of the year before when Kennedy was assassinated, the president. I yelled at the deputy, who was raising his head up off the launch controls, eyes wide from the rude awakening and screeching warning signal. Wake up! We've got a blue -1, I said, coming in. He blinked his eyes, reaching for the top secret code book. Roger, I hear it. I wasn't asleep, I was just resting my eyes. Wait a minute, did you say blue -1? Yeah, I shouted. He grabbed his headset and put it on. We both picked up our grease pens and began copying. Alpha, Foxtrot, Charlie, Zulu, Tango, Victor, Kilo, Lima, Bravo, Hotel. All missile crews acknowledge receipt of message on my count of 3. 1, 2, 3. I reached up and pressed the transparent plastic acknowledge button that sent an instant signal back to SAC headquarters in Omaha. After decoding and authenticating, the deputy and I exchanged codebooks to cross-check each other's work. We have been through this procedure 1,000 times. Find the blue code word identification. Turn to the page indicated in the code book. Read down the list of numbers and then turn to that page for the message. To our horror, there was no mistake. Jesus, I muttered, my head beginning to pound. This is a DEFCON 2. This meant we were just one step away from launching the missile. I stared at the deputy in disbelief. He stared back. Then with trembling hands, he took a deep breath and said very quietly, I'm officially informing you that I'm going to the launch checklist now. Prepare to follow along. MFT. Because we had been told over and over that the Titan II was a deterrent weapon system, we believed that no authenticated launch standby order would ever be sent to missile sites except in the real thing. In other words, no duty crew could ever receive, decode, and authenticate a launch standby order unless a nuclear attack had already been initiated against the United States. We'll hit you, but you got to hit us first. Deterrent attitude. With his finger following along each word in the checklist, the deputy began to read aloud from the emergency war order like a trained robot. Step 1. Sound the klaxon and topside siren. His fingers automatically lifted from the checklist to the klaxon button on the launch control console and pushed it. Klaxon activated, he said, as the overhead warning blast began piercing my one ear that wasn't covered by my headset. And let me tell you, this klaxon could blow you out of the control center. It was so loud. Check, I said loudly, doing what I'd been trained to do over and over in practice launch after practice launch after practice launch. As the deputy read, I followed each word in the checklist and watched every move he made to make sure there wasn't a single mistake made. Never were we to deviate one iota from the checklist. His finger went back to the checklist. Step 2, he continued. Clear all personnel topside from the missile site. The deputy's voice cracked as he announced over the PA system. Attention all personnel topside. Attention all personnel topside. This is the control center. Evacuate the site immediately to a radius of 10 miles. I repeat, evacuate the site immediately to a radius of 10 miles. Check, I responded, feeling foolish. Since the site was miles out in the Arizona desert at supposedly a classified location, nobody was topside except some roadrunners and coyotes. But regulations were regulations. We did make the announcement. The deputy then switched back to our intercom headsets and put his finger on the checklist again. Step 3, he announced. Assemble crew to launch control stations. Check, I said in a shaky voice as the deputy switched the sound system back to the loudspeakers. Emergency, emergency, commander, level 2, immediately. I repeat, level 2, immediately. The gravity of what was taking place was beginning to sink in. I had been through endless calls to arms many times before in practice drills, in crew evaluation checks, in operational readiness inspections by the gods of the Strategic Air Command themselves. But they were always dry runs. We never really believed it was anything but a game. Nobody in his right mind would ever launch one of those 10-story doodahs. Yet it looked as if this one was actually about to happen. The nightmare that had haunted us all seemed to be coming true. We were going to launch. I heard the pounding of the commander's feet as he came bounding down the stairs, 2 at a time. Now mind you, he just got out of bed. He was dead asleep. The klaxon went off. It's right above the bed. Like I say, it'll blow you right out of bed. He comes bounding down the stairs. He's got his launch key on a chain around his neck. He's got his ID tags around his neck on a chain. He's got his belt, his holster, his .38 stub-nose pistol stuck in his side, and he's got his BDDs on. That's all. And he comes running down to the command council. He sits down and he's ready to blow millions of people away now in his BDDs. Yeah. Like the dedicated soldier he was, he headed right for the command chair to assume full charge of the situation.